Okay, and we are live on YouTube. The meeting is yours, Mr. Mayor. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular City Council meeting of Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. It's the last council meeting of 2020. It's a virtual meeting. Call the meeting to order. Will we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And then after the Pledge of Allegiance, could we continue to stand for just a moment and do a moment of silence in memory of Harriet Sickma, the mother of DPW Director Tim Sickma, who passed away on 12/9. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Clerk, if you could call roll, please.
Mayor Beagle,
I'm here tonight.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Present.
Councilmember Behrman,
Here.
Councilmember Gotcho,
Here.
Councilmember Grenlin Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Present.
Councilmember Smiley,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. Changes or additions to the agenda as presented tonight? City Manager Brown, do you have any?
I'm looking to add a couple of walk-on items to the agenda this evening, Your Honor, one of which is related to a professional services agreement with Henke Advisor, and the second one is a recommendation to adopt a new resolution declaring a local state of emergency.
All right, well, like we agreed upon, Henke will be number 5 and the emergency will be number 6. I have one tonight. I'm going to remove the Tax Abatement Review Board reappointments from new business number 1, and we will bring those back at a later date. Do we have any other from the dais? All right, seeing none, move on to the first item tonight, and we have a presentation. It's a presentation of the fiscal year 2019-2020. It's our City of Wixom financial audit. And from Plant Moran tonight, we have Doug Bohr, Nicolette Acco, and Jeffrey Gertley. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to you guys.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and fellow council members. We appreciate the opportunity of having a spot on your agenda tonight to present to you the results from the June 30th, 2020 financial statement audit for the City of Wixom. I have with me tonight Nicolette Acco and Jeff Gertley, as the mayor indicated. Both Nikki and Jeff have worked on the City of Wixom audit for a couple of years now, are very familiar with City of Wixom finances as well as operations, so they'll be part of the presentation as well. Before I get started, just a few thank yous. So this year was a very unusual year for the city in that we did the audit remotely. I think that's the first time likely in the history of the city. Many of our communities as well are experiencing the same situation. And even with that, the city personnel did a great job in really helping us get through the audit. So City Manager Brown, Finance Director Stamper, certainly Deputy Treasurer Sharon as well were very helpful for us. Marilyn was out for a bit and Sharon was able to jump in and help to continue to provide the information requested and be available for questions during the audit. So thank you. Great job on really getting it through. So we still had a quality audit that was done in an efficient way. So thank you. Included in your packets tonight are really 3 deliverables. Doug, yes.
Before we get started, if anybody has questions, do you want to answer them at the end or as we are talking about it?
I think it would be easier to ask them as we go along, Mayor. Okay. And so we're going to cover a PowerPoint presentation, which will take up the majority of the time tonight that we have. And so I think that if there's a spot there you need to stop us and ask a question, that's what I would do. And we'll do our best to address that.
All right.
So in your packets, there's 3 things that were part of this year's audits deliverables. First of all, you have the city's financial statements, which is the thickest package that's in there, We're going to cover a lot of that information at a high level in the PowerPoint presentation, at least some of the highlights and trends that we identified from this year's financial statements. And Jeff's going to walk through a number of those items for you. In addition to that, you have what we refer to as the end of audit letter. So this is really a report out on a number of the things that we covered on the front end of the audit. Mayor, when we met with you separately, had a consultation with you. We sent out a separate communication to the other council members regarding audit planning, responsibilities associated with the audit, risks that we identified on the front end of the audit and how we are going to address those. Well, this is the back end communication to that, where we cover, okay, the audit's completed now, and here's what we found, and here were the results. So Nikki's going to walk through at a high level. She's going to walk through that letter for you as well. And then lastly, we have the graph presentation, which really is, again, as I mentioned, we're going to spend the majority of the time. And if we could maybe jump to the first slide in there, Jeff, we can get started on that.
Yep. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
You see my screen, Doug?
I can. Yep. Jump to if you jump to the next one, that'd be great. Thank you. So just a few highlights from this year's engagement before we get into some specific graphs that Jeff's going to cover. So first of all, and maybe most importantly, the city did receive an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the financial statements. It is the highest form of assurance you can receive from a third-party public auditing firm. And the city has received this opinion for the since I've been involved, and I think for a long time now. And it's really a testament to the quality of the records. What we're saying is that the numbers and the disclosures in the financial statements are materially correct in our professional opinion. So that's important. It's important to the bond rating agencies. It's certainly important to the state of Michigan, because if you don't have an unmodified opinion, they'll be following up with you. So that's something I want is a testament really to how the city manages its finances and keeps its records. So great job there, and kudos to Marilyn and her team. A couple other highlights in the statements that I just wanted to remind the city council about. First of all, you had budgeted to use about 2.7 million of your fund balance for fiscal year ended June 30th. And so you did not exceed that budgeted amount, and those monies were used to really fund two things. One, about $1.8 million was moved over to the major road funds for work that was done there on both Beck and West roads. And then secondly, you did also put a contribution into your pension fund of $2.2 million. So the use of fund balance was provided funding for both of those items and helped move those along. The city also issued $5.3 million in debt this year. Those were sewer bonds for the wastewater treatment system. By the end of the year, about half that money had been spent, and those were really for upgrades to the sanitary sewer system. The city continues to invest in its infrastructure and machinery and equipment. That was about $6.9 million this year. Jeff's going to cover a graph that compares your capital outlay compared to your annual depreciation to give you a sense for your trend lines with respect to that. Lastly, your pension system is funded 96% as of June 30th, and your retiree health care is funded about 120%. Jeff's also going to cover a graph that compares how you're doing there with your funding levels relative to both the state of Michigan and other Oakland County communities. So with that, Jeff, I'm going to pass it off to you to cover the next set of graphs.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. So hopping into the graph. So this first graph here shows a 5-year trend analysis of general fund revenue broken out by the various revenue sources. So total revenue of $11,951,000 in 2020 is just slightly down about 40,000 from $11,988,000 in 2019. And so as you can see in the graph, this decrease is primarily attributable to a slight decrease in property taxes and a decrease in building permit revenue as well. So the city has seen a decrease in building permits issued the past 2 years, and as a result, a decrease in building permit revenue. So overall, as you can see, though, revenue is fairly comparable to the prior year. So similarly, this next slide also shows a 5-year trend analysis, but of expenditures in the general fund. So looking at the graph, total expenditures in the first 4 columns, so general government, public safety, public works, recreation, and culture, saw a slight decrease from 7.3 million in 2019 to 7.1 million in 2020. So fairly comparable. So looking at transfers out and debt service, so this saw a significant decrease or significant increase from 2.6 million to 4.8 million in 2020. And as Doug kind of hit on, this is primarily attributable to a budgeted and planned transfer out to the Major Roads Fund for improvements located at the front of the financial statements.
Looks like you ran a little bit.
Jeff, we lost you there.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. Spike in contributions to MERS in 2019. So overall, expenditures are fairly comparable and to prior years with so this next graph is essentially a summary of the first two graphs. So looking at a 5-year trend of total revenue and total expenditures, but also including an analysis of unrestricted fund balance of the general fund. As you can see, this graph shows in revenue and expenditures each year since 2016. And as discussed in the previous slide, the spike in 2019 is due to the issuance of those pension and OPEB bonds. So as Doug kind of mentioned, the unrestricted fund balance did see a decrease of approximately 2.7 million compared to 2019. And as mentioned in slide 1, this is attributable to a significant transfer out to the Major Road and Capital Improvement Fund during 2020. So when looking at unrestricted fund balance, we typically look at unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of expenditures to gauge the health of a fund. And so every community is different based on needs and strategic plans, but we typically see unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of expenditures fall between 15 to 30%. And so the city shows a 32% ratio in 2020. So the city is at the higher end of that range, which shows the strong health of the general fund. So this next slide is used to highlight the fact that a lot of property tax funds pass through the city. However, not all of those funds remain or are held with the city. So as you can see in the slide, a majority or about half of the property tax funds goes to schools, and less than half, or about 40%, actually stays with the city, with the remaining 10% going to the county and various other authorities. So we thought this would be a good chart to show the flow of property tax funds coming into the city, and then subsequently the allocation of those funds.
So Jeff, relative to the systems and processes for collecting and remitting property taxes, so the city still has to have an infrastructure in place to collect the whole dollar, even though it's really only retaining 40 cents on that dollar, and has to handle the distribution of the remaining monies to the other constituencies.
Correct. Thanks, Doug. So this next slide shows a 6-year trend analysis of the operating results of the water fund. So looking at the chart, you can see that both revenues and cash outflows, which do not include depreciation, have increased from prior year 2019. And so this increase is primarily attributable to both an increase in rates and an increase in units billed. And so also looking at the chart, you notice that operating revenues exceed cash outflows, which mean that rates are being set appropriately to cover the operating expenses for the fund. And additionally, just looking at the unrestricted net position, or what's available to spend, that has increased from 2019 due to the financial performance of the fund. So similarly, this graph shows the same information: revenues, cash outflows, and unrestricted net position, however, for the sewer fund. So looking at the chart, you see that both revenues and cash outflows have increased from prior year 2019, which is similar to the water fund. And again, the increase is primarily attributable to an increase in sewer rate. And also the revenues in the chart are exceeding the cash outflows in 2020, meaning that the rates are being set appropriately to cover the operating expenses. So this next graph shows a 4-year trend of capital asset additions for governmental activities. So as you can see in the chart, capital asset additions decreased from approximately 5.7 million in 2019 to 3.9 million in 2020. So capital additions, asset additions will vary year to year based on improvements needed and budgetary plans. And so as you can see in the chart, the city continues to invest a significant amount of funds into improving the city's roads, buildings, equipment, et cetera, year over year. And as a result of the significant capital outlay year over year, depreciation expense has also increased slightly.
Jeff, we use this slide in the subsequent you're going to talk about really as a gauge on, are we reinvesting consistent with how the assets are being depreciated year over year? And so you can see here, the reinvestment has, starting really in 2017, between 2007 and 2018, the capital investments has exceeded the actual depreciation on those assets. You'd like those lines to be, over a period of time to remain pretty parallel, or where your depreciation is not exceeding your reinvestment in the city.
So similarly, this is a 4-year trend of the capital improvements in the enterprise funds, so the water and sewer funds. So there was a significant increase in capital improvements in 2020, increasing from about 2.1 million in 2019 to 3 million in 2020. And as Doug kind of alluded on the first slide, this increase stems primarily from capital improvements made to the wastewater treatment plant as a result of issuing the wastewater bonds. So as of June 30, 2020, the city has spent 2.8 million of the 5.4 million in wastewater bonds proceeds, and is a major reason for the significant capital outlay in 2020. So this next chart shows a comparison of the funded statuses of the city of Wixom's retiree healthcare and pension plan, along with, or compared to Oakland County and the state of Michigan's pension and retiree healthcare plans. So we wanted to show a benchmark to where the city stands compared to other governmental units. So as you can see in the chart, and as Doug hit on earlier, the city of Wixom's funded status is significantly greater than that of Oakland County and the state of Michigan. So the city of Wixom shows a funded status of 9.6 or 96.7% in the pension plan, which is up from 91.7% in 2019, and a 120.5% funded status in the OPEB plan, which is slightly down from 125% in 2019. So overall, you can see that the city is very well positioned compared to other governmental units for both plans.
Through the mayor, could I ask a question or should I wait?
Certainly. Nope. I know. And if you do have a question, speak up. I don't see everybody's picture right now. So if you do have a question, just pipe up.
Okay, thank you. So with regard to slide 10, and the funding, as far as where the city of Wixom is with regard to funding for post-retiree healthcare and pension. So we have those funding, very good funding rates because of, or percentages because of the bonding. So do you have a recommendation as far as how to move forward with regard to additional contributions in addition to the regular bond payments? Because those assumptions keep changing.
Yeah,
Rumors.
I can take that question. So relative to the funding is really dictated by two things. One, it's actually determined, as you know, for both pension and for OPEB. One is a required contribution, and one is the ADC on the OPEB side. So the actuaries are a piece of that, and then also there's some state rules around funding as well in terms of what the city has to do from a funding standpoint. What we would recommend is that you continue to take a look at the assumptions that go into those actuarial computations. And there's a number of assumptions that are included there. The big ones really are the investment rate of return that's assumed, and that's really should be predicated on the asset base that those investments are invested in. The second would be the long-term discounted rate of return that's used to make sure that's commensurate with the state rules. And then lastly, on the healthcare side, taking a look at, and Nikki's going to talk a little bit about this when she covers the letter, but looking at your healthcare trends. Are the costs that you're seeing with your retirees and employees consistent with what the published tables would indicate, or are they higher or lower? Because your experience is really what matters with respect to the funding. It's not necessarily what the published tables might indicate. So having a good sense for what those costs are for your plans, what your experience rate is, would be another key assumption that you'd want to make sure you're continually evaluating and discussing with the actuaries.
Okay. As far as keeping an eye on the assumptions and the changes of those assumptions, getting back to your opinion, do you believe that the city of Wixom should make additional contributions to that, to those bond payments, to the pension?
On top of the required contributions?
Correct.
Is what you're asking. So
Yes.
Right now, well, that's a tough question to answer, but I'll do my best. So on the OPEB side, your funding levels are quite significant right now. So you're sitting at 120%. So if it was me, I would take a look at what the required contribution is, and I'm not sure at this point I would do much more than the required contribution because of the funding level where it's at. On the pension side, you're very close to 100% funded as well. But on pension, you can see that can go up and down, in a given year, depending on the assumptions, the investment rate of returns that actually are experienced in the market. So that one, because you're so highly funded, would be one that I would watch a little bit closer. But if you're making the required contributions, that really is supposed to get you fully funded over a period of time. And so it's really prerogative of the city if they want to put more money into it today, or if you want to continue to just follow the required contributions at this point, because you are close to 100% funded.
Okay, so if that funding drops, then we can look at possibly putting more money in if there is more money that's available to do that.
Yes. And the way I always view these things is that you have a number of things that you're budgeting for within your capital improvement plans, your normal operating budget. So to me, it's a prioritization. And so if you're meeting the required contributions, you're not required to do anything more. And there may be other things that the current dollars could be spent on that are more higher priority within infrastructure or other operations of the city. And so to me, it's a balance and a choice between those things sometimes, because you can't necessarily do it all. And because your funding levels are so high, I wouldn't feel that it's imperative that you do extra contributions at this point. It'd be a good question for you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Doug, a follow-on question to that. If I recall, the Oakland County had also bonded for their unfunded liabilities some years ago, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Were they close to that 100% level when they bonded as well?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. We can get an answer to that. I don't know if they fully funded when they did that or just partially funded through the bonding. I don't recall.
Okay, so they may have partially. Okay, all right, thank you.
Nikki, we can check on that though.
Yep, we can confirm.
Any other questions on any of the information we've covered thus far?
Okay.
Just an editorial comment, if I can. The bonding decision that was made by council recently just made a huge difference, and it's an important commitment to the obligations of the city on the pension side, as well as the other post-employment benefits for our employees. And I just want to say that out loud a little bit more specifically than it's been said, right? That was an important decision to commit to funding those in a serious fashion. That's why we're at 96, almost 97% and over 120% on the other post-employment benefits. And that's not just superior to these other organizations that are listed here, Oakland County and the state, but just very unusual in general. And we're going to do our best to continue to guard that, as Councilmember Gronlund Fox just mentioned there, and make sure that we're paying attention to that and making sure that we keep ourselves at that high percentage rate of funding so that we make sure we can meet those obligations to prior employees that we made over the years. So it was a great decision by mayor and council. I just wanted to say so.
Nikki, do you want to cover the last slide and walk through the letter?
So on this last slide, we were asked by management to talk a little about the economic outlook for the city with respect to the uncertainties due to the pandemic. And although we don't have the crystal ball on what the next few years will have in store, there are a few things that could have an impact on local communities and the city in particular that would be key areas to monitor. And so the first item we have on here relates to the cost of healthcare. So there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding medical costs right now. So we might see fluctuations in healthcare premiums in the next year, 2 years. It seems like studies are showing that costs related to COVID are higher, but people are also putting off elective medical procedures. So it's really been skewing those projections that can be made. But this would be an area to keep an eye on for the city. The second is Act 51 road funding, which is driven primarily by fuel taxes. This state source could potentially decrease with people on the roads less, commuting to and from work, and just overall less travel in the state. Third, state shared revenue funding from the state is driven by sales tax, which has the potential to decrease based on activity. Currently, the state is projecting an increase to state shared revenue in fiscal year 21. But as we saw in 2020, state did cut the August CBTRS payment to balance their own budget. So I know watching these funds will be on the city's radar. State shared revenue does make up the second largest source of revenue. Lastly, there could be a fluctuation in property tax values, which would drive your property tax revenue. It doesn't seem right now that the pandemic has impacted the housing market much, with interest rates being so low. But keeping an eye on assessments will be a good indicator of what the next few years will look like for the city. And then we also have on here, on December 8th, the state of Michigan, in conjunction with the Michigan Municipal League, held their 9th webinar in the COVID updates and resources for local government series. The session they had last week focused on economic forecasting as provided by U of M. And we have provided a link to the slide presentation, but wanted to highlight a few things from that webinar that we thought would be relevant to this discussion. And so they provide an update on the Michigan unemployment rate. So unemployment in the first quarter of 2020 averaged about 4%, and then jumped to about 20% in the second quarter of 2020, and now has fallen to approximately 5.5. The projections looking out do expect those rates to remain relatively consistent, with rates at about 6.6% by the end of 2021. and 5.6% by the end of 2022. The second item is that we wanted to touch on is they have data surrounding Michigan personal income that they've compiled. It did spike in the second quarter of 2020, primarily due to the federal stimulus, and fell by about 8.6% in the third quarter as federal support faded. And they are forecasting income to fall another 2.5% in the fourth quarter of 2020 with the expiration of that federal support, but are also expecting new federal funding that will boost income in the first quarter of next year.
So Nikki, with that personal income potentially falling absent another stimulus, that really kind of plays back into your comment about the sales tax. So the purchasing power drops. And so the sales tax collected, in addition, the online purchases, it's not as clear if all the sales and use tax are being collected on those like it would be for in-person purchases as well. So that'd be another risk.
Yeah, exactly. With consumer spending potentially decreasing. And then the third item we have on here relates to job growth. Two-track recovery estimates that they highlight, with slow recovery industries being leisure and hospitality, retail, government, and any other services, and fast recovery industries being everything else. And so with the city of Wixom being kind of a mix of commercial, industrial, and residential, the city may rebound quicker than some neighboring communities. The last item that we have on here is the second portion of the webinar that you'll see if you visit the slides, where the Michigan Economic Development Corporation discussed strategies that local units could use to make the most out of the downtown areas in the winter months. And so I won't go through them, but they do have a lot of good ideas in there on how to use existing assets in areas that we thought the city might be interested in. So if there were no other questions on the financial statements, we'll switch over to the letter. So this was the other deliverable in your packet. And so the end of audit letter closes the loop on our required communication to council from the letter that we had sent out in September. If there were any findings that came out of our audit that would require us to bring them to your attention, they would be communicated here. However, we are happy to note that we had no audit findings this year, which, as Doug mentioned, this wasn't a standard year with all of our procedures being done remotely. So it's a huge testament to Marilyn and her team to be in this position. So we really do appreciate the collaborative effort from the city. There were no new accounting policies adopted this year and no new accounting pronouncements that were required to be adopted by the city. And so because of that, there are no real significant changes to the required communications portion of our letter this year. The one thing that I did want to touch on is at the top of page 3 of the letter. Just pointing out that there are sensitive estimates included in the financial statements, and those would be related to the net pension liability and the OPEB liability.
Nikki, a lot of those were the ones that I was talking about when I was answering the question in terms of the assumptions that go into developing those numbers. So those are estimates, those obligations are estimates based on the assumptions that are used.
Yep. Exactly.
So we take a look at those to see, are they reasonable? Are they consistent with what we see relative to the city of Wixom facts, as well as other communities, as well as state requirements, to make sure that the assumptions at least are within a reasonable range of what we'd expect. And we found those to be so.
Yep. And so if we move down to page 5 of the letter, there are a few of the assumptions that we did want to touch on related to the OPEB liability and the valuation. So currently, the mortality tables being used by the actuary are not the most recently issued tables. The most recently issued tables are Pub 10 tables specific for public retirement systems. And it does sound like, in talking to the city and the actuary, that these will be used going forward. So we just wanted to make sure that those are on your radar to ensure that they are reflected in the next valuation. The next item that we have in here, and Doug kind of touched on this earlier when he talked about how the long-term rate of return should be reflected in the basis of where those assets are invested. And so the OPEB plan is using a 7% rate of return, where the assets are held with the MERS retiree health funding vehicle, which has projected a rate of return of 7.6. And so we would really recommend that that rate of return used be reflective of where the assets are held. So using that 7.6 rate of return going forward. And then also the healthcare trend rates that Doug talked about. Currently, the actuary is using industry benchmarks to come up with that healthcare cost trend rate. And again, we would recommend that the city talk to the actuary and utilize healthcare trend rates that align with what's actually happening with the city's premiums. So the second item in this letter I wanted to just touch on is the administrative charges. So oftentimes the general fund will charge other funds for work done on their behalf. And there has been a heightened focus on these recently. And so we would recommend that anytime there is a cost allocation done, that these costs have a basis to support those charges. And then still on page 5, at Plant Moran, we've established a COVID-19 resource center. So we know there's a lot of grant funding coming out and a lot of guidance from the various granting agencies. So if there are any questions that you have, feel free to submit them to our resource center or reach out to any of us. And then the last item that I wanted to touch on in the other recommendation section is just related to cybersecurity. So with so much of your information being publicly available, local units are at a higher risk of an attempted attack. So this is something to review just to ensure that you have the appropriate controls in place and staff training. And our cyber team has actually published a checklist of items to consider as you work through this that we can share with the city.
We've seen, Nikki, a heightened number of cyber incidents, both with our governmental clients and our commercial clients during the pandemic. And so anything there to shore up controls, make sure that, data, sensitive data in particular is protected so that the city is protected would to me be high on the priority list.
Nikki, I have a question regarding that.
Yeah.
In private industry, we've been doing what's called pen testing or penetration testing for the last few years. Do you see municipalities also moving to that model where maybe an annual penetration test is done to look for both physical as well as breaches through different firewalls or physical breaches within buildings?
Yes, definitely. That is something that our cyber team has worked with some of our communities on, doing that testing, doing certain phishing attacks. If you talk to someone in our cyber team, they'll say a lot of it does have to do with staff training, because that's where a lot of the risk does exist.
Yeah, and I think we've been doing a good job there, but I'm thinking about the other types of attack surfaces that exist within an organization that aren't even obvious, right?
Right. Yep. No, the focus on our cyber team, at least, and I think a lot of the cyber consultants is around the vulnerability. So where are you most vulnerable to be penetrated, as you said. So that testing is something that they do on a regular basis, both for commercial and our governmental clients to help them along the way. Or we either working side by side with the internal IT departments or outsourced IT departments in some instances. We've helped in a number of capacities.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a follow-up question regarding that through the mayor.
Go ahead.
With regard to the question that Deputy Mayor Resnick had, and you were talking about the checklist, would that penetration test be one of the items that were on that checklist that you were referring to?
You know what? I have to review the checklist to refresh my memory, but if it is, that if it's something that your internal IT department could assess, then yes. But I can
Okay.
double check that.
And then anything else on that checklist, those would be recommendations that you would have with regard to that area.
Yes, the checklist would be things that internally your IT department could assess with what's in place and what could use a little more attention.
Okay. And then with regard, on page 4, with regard to the administrative charges, and you were talking about the cost allocations,
Mhm.
do you have recommendations for that? I mean, is that something that Plant Moran best practices is that we shouldn't do, or we should do, however, be cautious, or what would your recommendations be with regard to the administrative charges section?
So a recommendation here, so for example, one of the administrative charges that happens is the general fund charging the water and sewer funds. And that charge hasn't changed in a few years. And so we have talked to Marilyn and the mayor and the city manager of reviewing that charge to make sure that there's a basis to support how much the general fund is charging the water and sewer fund. So that could be based on employees. It could be based on other factors that would trigger that charge. So we have discussed that with them.
In a lot of instances, Nikki, like from a best practice standpoint, do you have to review it every year? No, but there should be a foundational basis for what the charge is. And then periodically you revisit it. It might be every couple of years. If there's a change in city operations, you may change it. We have a number of communities that they seem to have a flat charge that hasn't changed in a while. When they actually got into it and took a look at cost allocation of how much time is spent on behalf of these other funds, they actually found they weren't charging enough. And so it can go both ways. You know, the concern would be, are you charging too much? In this instance here, you know, it's hard to say because we haven't looked at any type of support for those charges. But I know that those benefits are, those activities are benefiting those funds. So to me, it's a matter of kind of putting pencil to paper to bring it up to today's operations and see what those charges should be.
Now,
Go ahead.
does that area that we were discussing, the administrative charges, does that affect the city's bond rating in any way? Or no?
No.
Okay.
Should not.
And then
No.
my last question. Okay. My last question is with regard to, you were talking about the OPEB and the pension funding. I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. Are you recommending that we go with the 7.6% or the 7%?
So
The
currently,
7.6.
yep,
Sorry.
currently a 7% rate of return is being utilized in the OPEB valuation, but all of the OPEB assets are with the MERS Retiree Health Funding Vehicle, which has set a long-term rate based on the vehicle and the makeup of those assets. They've set a long-term rate of return of 7.6. And so it would be prudent to use the 7.6 because that reflects where the assets are held.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
MERS does periodically reevaluate that long-term rate of return based on their experience, based on the composition of the assets, if that were to change. And so it might be 7.6 today, but 2 years out, they may look and say, nope, it's 7.4 or 7.8. But normally, whatever that is, it is the assets that they're investing in. They're looking out over a long period of time, and that's the expected return that they anticipate. And normally, that's what you'd like to see used for the plan.
And just to
Thank you
pipe in
very
on that, historically, it's been a problem sometimes when rates of return expectations are set too high and they're not met, and that creates funding shortages, right? So if I had to be on the high end or the low end, I'd rather be on the low end. That's where we're at. And I appreciate the perspective that maybe we need to look at aligning with the expected rate of return with our investment vehicles, but sometimes those get missed. And usually they're not, the trend isn't always to the positive. So, you know, I understand the recommendation. We'll take a look at it. As I said, if I had to pick a spot to be, I'd rather be on the conservative side, which is where we are. So.
And I agree. That's kind of where I was getting at. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
And if we have any other further questions about the cybersecurity, new business number 3, we have from our IT consultant, Mr. Blackburn. We can ask him too about those. So,
Mayor, if there's no further questions, thank you again for time and attention from council and the questions as well. And if there's anything afterwards that you're happy to be looking through that we can assist with, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we'll get back to you on the cyber checklist, because I know that was a follow-up item. And then we had a second item, Nikki, as well, that I think we were going to follow up on as well, related to Oakland County bonding.
yes.
Yep.
Okay.
On the cyber checklist side of things, by the way, there's been a variety of documents that's been provided from Plant Moran that I just recently printed off that relate to best practices and those kind of things. And we're going to start taking a look at that with our IT consultant, seeing what we can implement there. There's a variety of documents that I've got sitting on the corner of my desk right now that we're going to be looking to take a look at how we can implement those and better our operations in terms of hardening our operations against potential malware and other attacks, which are becoming more and more prevalent.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Happy
Okay.
holidays.
Same to you. Enjoy and be safe, please.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on now to approval of minutes. We've got one set of minutes to approve tonight. It's from the regular city council meeting minutes of December 8th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I've got a motion and a second to approve the regular city council meeting minutes of December 8th, 2020. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Smiley,
Aye.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchel,
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
7 yes.
Thank you. We got 2 letters of correspondence tonight. The first one is a notice of hearing for the electric customers of DTE Electric Company, case number U-20851. And we have a nice letter of thank you from the Commerce Chargers Youth Football Program. And that brings us to the first call to the public. I'll read the rules to the calls to the public. They are as follows. The public shall address the council during a call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state the reason for their addressing the council. And all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. And if you're viewing or listening to this Zoom on your phone and you have a question, please press *9 and we'll call on you. Do we have anybody for the first call to the public?
No hands raised at the moment.
All right, seeing none, I'll close the first call to the public. Excuse me. We move on to city manager's report. The first report is the departmental reports of November 2020. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Yeah, Mr. Sigma, in terms of,
Hey, guys.
we've been fortunate, we've dodged a bullet. We haven't had any big snow events yet this year, but how are we doing on
Yes.
salt in the barn?
The salt in the barn, we have about 1,300 tons of salt. We're prepared and we're able to buy another 6,000 if needed this year. So we're setting pretty good so far.
Super. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the departmental reports of November? All right, seeing none. Next up is the quarterly budget investment reports of June 30th, 2020. Any questions for Marilyn? Oh, all right. You left out, Marilyn. We're going to move on. Consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the agenda, at the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gotcho,
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to new business number one. And new business number one is a recommendation to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Jeffrey Isaac and Fred Alexander, alternate, to the Board of Review with terms to expire December 31st, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Or
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Did I mishear something? I thought you bumped something off of, I thought you said it was new business one.
Yes, we took off the Tax Abatement Review Board appointments of Kevin Hinckley and Robert Zewald.
Oh, but the other two are.
Yep, the other
I'm
two
sorry.
are remaining.
Not the whole thing, just the text.
Nope.
Understood. Well, while I've got the floor, just want to say thank you to the appointees for their service to the city and both in the past and assuming going forward. I support the appointments. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We just had our December board of review today, by the way, so we appreciate them coming and taking care of that business for us today.
All right. Seeing no other questions, I have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Jeffrey Isaac and Fred Alexander, alternate, to the Board of Review with terms to expire December 31st, 2023. Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
yes.
Councilmember Gotcho,
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Move on to new business number two, which is a recommendation to review the fiscal year 2019-2020 financial audit and authorize and accept to file. Do I have a motion?
To approve.
Support.
Very good. Any further discussion on this? Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following on questions about our OPEB and not so much the pension, because that's a little clearer where we are relative to other municipalities and the state. When do we plan, the city manager Brown and I spoke on this earlier today, but when do we plan to look at those things? Our actuarial tables are based on 2014, I think we saw. And is that something we do as a council regularly? And if not, are we thinking about handling that this year per their recommendation? I heard Steve's counterpoint to our hired CPA's recommendation. And I guess that begs the question of when do we look at that as a council? Is there any thought on that, Mr. Brown?
Well, from city administration standpoint, we will be contacting the actuary. I certainly didn't mean to say I was bucking the recommendation. I did counterpoint it just a little bit, but we will be contacting our actuary to discuss those different assumptions that we have, the tables that we're using, to make sure that we're using the best information available so that we're having the appropriate level of investment and attention being paid to how we're funding those important obligations. So we will be following up on that. And one thing that we could possibly talk about that at the budget work sessions this year, once we've established some contact with the actuary and gotten some ideas about what would be involved, and maybe we bring that up for discussion at that point in time, is one thing I would recommend.
Do we have an actuary that we work with, or how does that? I don't know how that
Yes.
works. Okay.
Yes, and I do want to comment regarding the recommendation on the table. Keep in mind that a funding actuary for the OPEB plan is only done every 2 years. So the current funding actuary was done in 2018, where they utilized an older table. When we're moving into the actuary to be used for next year, which would be using fiscal year end 2020 numbers, we would request for them to use the more updated table and make sure they are. So it wasn't that they were doing anything incorrectly. It was just more the timing of the actuary and when the study was done. So those will be updated to be a newer table the next time when we're coming into next year.
Exactly why I was asking that. I knew it was just, it's not done every year, I recognize. And Steve kind of gave me some background on how we do it. So I was just posing the question to council that we look at it this year. I think we have some differing data and differing views and different experiences and different council than last time. So I just want to be sure we got it on our agenda in 2021.
Very good. Councilmember Berman.
Maybe, thank you. My question is more just for information, but do we envision that these updated numbers, once we get them in as recommended, is it going to bring our projection down or bring it up? Do you have any kind of information on where that will go? Or
well, specifically, if you're looking at increasing the percentage interest rate, that would bring us to a higher funding level, because we anticipate we're going to make more money over a period of time. So that in particular would bring us to a higher funding level, whereas the other tables may bring us in the other direction. If we're looking at longer life on a mortality table, that would work in the opposite direction. So how they would complement each other, we wouldn't know until the study is complete. But one might possibly put us in a lower percentage funding, but the other would then bump us up. So it could virtually just wash each other out. And then as far as the healthcare rates, typically when you look at our history of healthcare rate increases each year, we are typically lower than what the standard is. So if we're experiencing, say a 5% increase in our healthcare rates per year, but the standard is 7, if we go with our trends, again, that would be more favorable for us as far as our funding level.
So
and typically that's what we see.
So we very well may be 100% in both come next year, or above 100% in the one, and frankly, much better than any other municipality around us.
Yeah, really the only thing this would control would be the healthcare plan. The pension actuary is pretty much set. We can't make any changes to any of those assumptions. Those are assumed by MERS, who's the holder of those funds, and the pension plan. So the only thing these assumptions would make a change to would be our healthcare plan.
Thank you for the information.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Yes, maybe a question for Marilyn regarding the recommendation for perhaps modifying the way we do an allocation of administrative costs. Are we looking to do something for next fiscal year? Because I imagine it's not just limited to water and sewer. There's got to be others that we possibly don't allocate properly administrative costs to.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm currently going over the water and sewer allocations because those have not been done for several years. It had been chosen a while back to keep that number static, just mostly because of the position the sewer fund was in for so long, to not burden some of that expenditure there. But we've come to a point in time that we're reevaluating the staffing cost and how much time is spent for oversight by, say, DPW, you know, what they contribute to the water sewer system, what our finance department contributes for collecting bills, payments, different things like that, what the city manager's input is, the building department. So you have to look at all of those departments and what percentage of cost is attributable of those staffing. And we're looking at that currently to have good numbers for that when we go into budget and make a decision of what are we going to do with these numbers? Do we keep it the same? Are we at the point where we might change that number? And then a couple of the other items we charge is we have, I think, $50,000 that we charge the local road fund. And then the other one was the fee that we charge the library for our costs, which was under a contract that we signed with them. So I'm not really sure how much that can be changed because we had an administrative service agreement with them that I believe is 20 years. So that may not be changeable. That had a CPI increase that was built into that when we started that. So there's a couple of them, but all of those are going to be reviewed. And I don't anticipate that the water and sewer is going to be less than what we're charging them.
Right.
I really think we're going to end up with a little bit higher number when we update those figures.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Marilyn or Steve? All right. Seeing none, I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to review the fiscal year 2019-2020 financial audit and authorization to accept and file. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchall,
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
7 yes.
Thank you. Moving on to new business number 3 is a request for authorization to renew Microsoft Exchange from PPI Information Systems of Farmington Hills at a price of $4,480.09 from the city network account number 101-228-956.283. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. And with us today is from our IT consultant is Mr. Blackburn. If you want to give us a little information on this, please.
Oh, absolutely. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for taking the time to go over this item. So what this agenda item is the renewal for the Microsoft Exchange hosting services provided by Microsoft. Approximately 3 years ago, we migrated from an in-house Exchange server to this cloud-hosted service.
Okay. And then this, we did go out for bids on this, correct?
I went out for quotes.
Okay, quotes. And we got,
And one of the quotes was a My Deal process quote, which is something we've used in lieu of a full solicitation of bids process in the past. And we actually ended up bettering the price that was offered through that My Deal quote process that they went through, or bid process that they went through. So we actually feel pretty comfortable that we've done about as well as we could have with that comparison to that My Deal process.
okay. Very good. Do we have any other questions on for Mr. Blackburn on this issue? Okay, after we take a vote, Mr. Blackburn, do we have any questions for him about the cybersecurity, or are we good for that for now, or? Councilmember Berman?
Do you want me to go now, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, let's go now, and then we'll go to the vote.
Okay. Thank you. I guess my question was more in relation to whether or not Mr. Blackburn is, familiar with the situation with having with Walled Lake schools, and whether or not that's something that could potentially happen to the city of Wixom, or what we're doing to prevent that.
Yeah, I'm distantly familiar with that, and absolutely, yes, the city is vulnerable to cyber attacks. all cities, all businesses that use information systems and are connected to the internet have the potential to being infiltrated either by malware, by phishing attacks, or just bad actors getting into the system.
So my understanding with the Walt Lake situation was basically someone was trying to sell them their data back. And
yes. Yes. So ransomware style attack. So this is very prevalent. It's extremely profitable for the black hats to do ransomware attacks that then fund their operations to do more ransomware attacks. I can tell you a little bit about the steps we've taken to prevent the city to being vulnerable to these types of attacks. So first thing that we've done is we've got a layered backup system. So our data is backed up at multiple locations and is what we consider offline. So the way the ransomware attacks work are their software infiltrates the information systems and does not make itself or its presence aware until it reaches deep into the system through multiple layers of backup. And then once it gets that far, then it triggers the encryption process. So even if you have a backup, multiple layers of that, all of those backups can also be encrypted, and then you're left with the proposition of recreating the data or paying the ransom. Now, what we've done is we've added an additional layer of backup that is offline. So even if the system is infiltrated deeply and the trigger is pulled, everything is encrypted, we do have a process to restore the data to its original state.
thank you. So it would take time, but it's fixable. That's the information.
It is. And one of the things I have to stress is cybersecurity is not a stagnant proposition or static proposition. You have to continually stay current, and we have to keep the systems up to date. So the hardware that we've got in place, the software tools that we've got in place, and even user training needs to be continually reviewed and tested and updated.
Thank you for that information. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor, Resnick, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Blackburn, in terms of the penetration testing that was discussed in the previous agenda item, one of my strong opinions, having witnessed several of these now, is that utilization of a third party rather than internal IT resources produces a different outcome. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you've hit on a very important concept, is coming in for a security audit. Just like you had your books reviewed by a third party, let's do the same thing with the IT controls. So doing pen tests, doing tabletop reads, doing review of the security procedures we've got in place from another point of view or another set of eyes has a huge value to it. And I'd welcome participating in something like that.
And I think that going into next budget season, we should deeply consider that as part of our normal processes going forward, right? Because in answer to Councilman Behrman's question, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? I mean, even
yes, absolutely.
Even the guy gets hacked, right? So, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Grumman Fox.
Thank you. That was my question. It's been answered.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sharp.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Blackburn, that was refreshing to hear, because my experience with consultants is frequently they're upselling their next project when they're presenting their current one. And that's what good consultants do, even the best ones. So if you're receptive to that, that certainly sounds positive to me, and I agree with Deputy Mayor Resnick. We probably ought to consider that in 2021. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Thank you for hanging on and answering those questions for us, Mr. Blackburn.
You're very welcome.
And with that, I've got a motion and support to approve the request for authorization to renew Microsoft Exchange from BPI Information Systems of Farmington Hills at a price of $4,480.09 from the city network account number 101-228-956.283. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gotchall,
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Moving on to new business number 4 is a recommendation to approve an agreement with the Robinson Brothers Encore Development for winter maintenance by adopting a resolution and authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the 2020 agreement and the resolution. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Support.
Thank you. Mr. Tim, you want to give us a little brief on this?
Certainly. If you remember earlier in the year, we did accept roads from the Robertson Brothers in the anthem at Tribute, and we are maintaining those roads now as part of our local roads. There's one project left yet with Robertson Brothers, the Encore area, and I believe it's 0.31 miles of roadway that they have asked us to clear as part of our general maintenance during snow events. And we estimated the costs for this at, based on the RCOC maintenance agreements that are already in place, and marked it up as just a little from last year's agreement. And we have actually 3% more than last year's agreement, and that's what we're recommending today.
Very good. And again, that money is enough money. You don't think we're going to be losing money on this if we get a couple of big storms or anything like that?
Nope. This is an estimate based on years of use through Oakland County's maintenance agreement, and we're following the same guidelines. And it's actually just a little bit more than the road commission's agreement. So we feel confident that we will not lose any money on this.
Good to hear. Any other questions for Tim? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve an agreement with Robinson Brothers Encore Development for winter maintenance by adopting a resolution and authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the 2020 agreement and the resolution. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchall,
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
Mayor?
Moving on.
On your next item, I just want to correct something. I see a hanging proposal, if you will, in the second line. It just right after Maryland, if you skip that proposal, which was a typo that was left in there from a correction as you read this next item.
Okay, so it's just, it's not a
Maryland goes
proposal.
straight to 4, just drop that proposal.
Okay. All right,
Sorry about that.
no problem. New business number 5 is a recommendation to approve a professional services agreement with Henka Advisor LLC of Bowie, Maryland for various services on the prospective back road widening project for a total cost not to exceed $12,000 from account number 101-441-801.391 and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Support.
Thank you. City Manager Brown, can you give us a little information on this, please?
Right, so in 2019, November of 2019, if I recollect, the city council approved a professional services agreement with Hank Advisor, which is essentially Bill Hanka to serve as a grant writer lobbyist for us on the Beck Road widening project. And that was at a cost of about $2,800 per month for a 10-month period, so it was a $28,000 cost. That initial 10 months of effort has been completed. Various grant submissions were made, and as part of those grant submissions, both the city and Bill Hanka, as well as our partners on this project, spent a lot of time pulling together information. And that was the reason for the high level of billing and the effort that was involved from Hanka Advisor. Now that we've gone through that initial year, unfortunately, we weren't able to land any of the grant applications that we did submit. We have a debrief scheduled this coming Friday, actually, on our most recent application. That we're looking forward to see what we can learn from that experience and then apply to our experiences going forward. So the purpose of this recommendation from city administration is to recommend that we re-up with Bill Hanka and continue to utilize his services for future either grant submissions, potentially earmarks, and a variety of other different funding sources that could become available in 2021. We're projecting that the retainer that we have here is basically $1,000 per month, much reduced from that $2,800, because a lot of that heavy lifting's already been done, and we can take that information that we had put together in our prior efforts and utilize that, tweak it, repackage it, improve it in certain ways, but the level of effort is going to be a lot less than it was in our first year of or first 10 months of experience with Hanka Advisor, and we expect that the cost will be a lot less, and because of that, we're projecting it at $1,000 per month for the 12 months of 2021 for a total cost of $12,000. The professional services agreement is attached. And if you look in there, we have a 30-day out. So for example, if we decide we're done with pursuing funding sources in October or September, we can give the notice of 30 days and terminate the contract and not proceed with additional monthly retainers after that. This will provide us his services in terms of writing, researching, submitting, advocating, coordinating lobbying trips if that becomes necessary, and it is something that I would expect that we would consider doing in 2021 as well. So there's a variety of services that he would provide through the PSA at that monthly retainer of $1,000 per year, and that's what we're recommending.
Very good. Any questions? Councilmember Granlund Fox?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Brown, is the person or the company that's doing the services for us, are they in contract with the other communities that are also working on this back road widening?
Right, so the city of Novi is our principal other partner currently that's fully on board with us in terms of pursuing these funding sources. Just had a meeting to finalize this agreement with the Novi city manager, Pete Auger, as well as Bill Hanka. And we expect that there's going to be similar action taken in whatever step is required at Novi in terms of their administrative processes. I expect that they will follow suit. This is an equal split in this contract of $1,000 per entity. The last time around, because we were getting a higher level of service, if you will, because we were submitting for funding on aspects of the project that were only in the city of Wixom, as opposed to being part of the larger project. We actually had a higher burden of funding in that last contract. This one is an equal one because we don't anticipate pursuing any of those other funding sources that would be strictly focused on Wixom. So it's an equal split. I do expect that Novi will follow suit at $1,000 per month as well.
So there is no piece of this that, I have to be careful how I word this. There's no piece of this that's based on how many miles of the road is in one community versus the other?
Correct.
Okay.
This is the submission of the fund to the funding sources or on the funding sources really isn't going to be any kind of a higher effort because of a slight difference in mileage. It's basically culling the information together for each community to do that. And that's already mostly been done, as I mentioned, in the last contract. So from here on out, it's basically just submitting for funding and we're not worried about a split of costs based on mileage or anything like that. It's just an equal burden shared between the two communities going forward right now.
Okay. And my last question, forgive me, I haven't reviewed this, but is there anything in the contract that indicates that if we haven't gotten any grant money so far from the work that this person or group of people that have been doing, is there anything in the contract, or could we put anything in the contract that if we continue not to get any grant funding, that amount could be reduced that we pay? Or at that point, would we just pull out?
Right. I think that more than likely it would be the latter. The situation with these kind of funding sources, the sheer number of applications is huge, and the number of awards are small, obviously. So there's no guarantee of success on this. There's still the level of effort and engagement that is going to be required from Hank Advisor, regardless of whether we're successful or not. So both Pete Auger and myself are comfortable that it's appropriate to expend this money, and hopefully we'll end up with a good outcome in the long run. But regardless of the outcome, the effort would have been put in by the consultant, and the company would still merit the payment that we would be offering. So,
understand. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. Hey, Steve, is Northville Township going to go in with us or anything? Or
we're going to reinvigorate our approach to that and readdress that, I guess, because things have changed on the political spectrum there, and I will expect that we will be making entreaties to Northville Township to see what we can do about getting them involved formally back in these processes. They were continuing to stay involved, if you would, informally, in other words, participating in meetings and staying involved from an information standpoint. But I think it will be appropriate for us to go make a visit to Northville Township and see what we can do in terms of finding out their level of interest in getting involved formally.
All right. Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Yeah, just a comment that with the change in administration, I think it's very, very important because a lot of things change when administration changes. The head of the Appropriations Committee, right? That changes. People at the USDOT will also change, and it's going to be important that we have somebody feet on the ground in Washington to get at these new funding sources and potentials for appropriations where applicable for this. Who knows? Our tide may change. Michigan may come in favor again, right?
Right.
So
yeah, there's some interesting developments on that today. I don't know if anybody's seeing that level of detail, but I was privy to some information that came out today. The Department of Transportation nominee for the Biden administration has been identified, or more than likely been identified, as Pete Buttigieg, and also the Energy Secretary appointee nominee would be Jennifer Granholm. So there's new information breaking today, and those are both two people from the Midwest, which was a good development as far as I'm concerned in terms of having people from our area and our region with voices at that table. So as the deputy mayor mentioned, with the change likely coming in administration and the different things that are going to come into play with new people in charge of agencies, new approaches to it, we're excited that we're going to have an opportunity to succeed again this year in different ways. One example is earmarks, right? Earmarks had been the way that much funding had been allocated in the past. There's talk of those becoming a reality again. We're going to be keeping an eye on that. That's in the proposal letter from Bill Hanke as well, that we're going to be keeping our eyes open for opportunities on earmarks and making sure that he's at the table with us and representing us and trying to get our project funded through whatever source of monies is available.
Councilmember Berman.
Quick question. With regards to the proposal attached to your memo, it said 25,000. Do we need to allocate another 500? It was 1,000 per month per community plus 1,000 in travel in the last paragraph.
That's an if come type of thing. So you're right. We could, if we wanted to, we could pump that in there. But that could also be something that I just handle as a miscellaneous invoice. We can make that change if you'd like.
I'm fine either way. It's more what's easier for the city.
I think that that's an if come type of thing. So we could include it in there and make it a 24,500 not to exceed. That would be fine. If you want to make the change.
12,500.
I'm sorry, 12,500. I'm talking in total, sorry. Yes, 12.5.
Do we need an amendment made for that, or are we just fine making that change?
We can go either way on that. If you want to make the amendment, make it formal, we can do that. Again, that's a $500 item that would be well within my approval authority. So it's not really within the retainer aspect of it, so we could handle it separately, or we could make the correction if you'd like.
My opinion is expenses are usually outside of that, so leave it as is. It may not come, right? There won't be any. Well,
Correct.
Likely not be any plane flights anyway.
Right.
I'm fine either way. I just noticed the difference in the numbers and wanted to at least make sure it was brought up.
Good potential catch. I think we're fine leaving it as is, but we can change it as well, whatever the council's prerogative is.
I'm fine leaving it. Thank you.
I'm comfortable leaving it the way it is too. Any other questions? Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve a professional services agreement with Hankup Advisor LLC of Bowie, Maryland for various services on a prospective Beck Road widening project for total cost not to exceed $12,000 from account number 101-441-801.391 and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. Roll call vote, please.
Member Sharp,
Get that?
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchall,
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. Moving on to new business number 6, it's a recommendation to adopt a new resolution declaring a local state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Move to approve.
Support.
Very good. Again, City Manager Brown, do you want to tell us what's different about this resolution is in the first one, or?
Right. So in March of 2020, at the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, we had a mayoral declaration of a local state of emergency. As was required at the time, we had to have a council resolution that would extend it beyond a 7-day period. We had that on March 26th of 2020. And we've been operating underneath that ever since. That particular declaration of a local state of emergency had some information contained therein that's no longer very relevant. If you were to look at some of the content, there was things about the mayor's declaration of a local state of emergency being limited to 7 days, as I just mentioned. There was also a reference to, in accordance with the governor's executive order 2020-15, which is even if we were looking at governor's orders, was outdated by a factor of 7 or 8 after the changes had been done over the time period that was involved. And then there was a change from the governor's executive orders to legislative action that has now come into play. So the wording of the new resolution that was provided by the city attorney and was recommended by the city attorney incorporates some changes to reflect changing realities and changing aspects of the environment that the city's operating in. And the purpose of this is just to update the local state of emergency declaration to be in line with the latest information and to make sure that we're covered and can move forward with electronic meetings and that sort of implication and impact of the pandemic in a way that's appropriate and not dated as was under the old local declaration of a state of emergency. So this is just sort of a refresh to make sure that our language is current and accurate and compliant with the latest guidelines and recommendations that we are operating under.
Very good. Any questions? Seeing none, I got a motion and support to approve the recommendation to adopt a new resolution declaring a local state of emergency in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchall,
Yes.
Councilmember Grunland Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
7 yes.
Thank you. That concludes new business for tonight. We move on to the second call to the public. The rules for the second call to the public are the same as the first call to the public, with the exception of you can speak whatever's on your mind. And remember, if you're on the phone and you're attending this meeting, just press *9 and you'll raise your hand and we'll call on you. Do we have anybody for the second call to the public who wish to speak tonight?
No callers with their hands raised at the moment. Again, press *9 if you'd like to raise your hand to be called on. No hands are raised.
Very good. I'll close the second call to the public and move on to city manager's comments. City Manager Brown.
So we've got a city manager update that I've provided that speaks to a variety of things. We had some direction from council last week about seeing some marketing done on the columbariums. We have undertaken that and we have had a few responses to the availability of the niches to our residents. So the city clerk, Kathy Buck, continues to address those and deal with them on a professional and accommodating basis. So that's happening. DPW update on the fats, oils, and grease question. We had some breaking news on that today that broke so late I wasn't able to really get through the reports. So I'm going to parse through the reports and sit down and discuss those with our contract operator as well as our DPW director, Tim Sikma, and we'll bring that forward for discussion and coverage in January. So that's one other update there. Wanted to say on the finance side of things, both what's related in the city manager update as well as something else. Congratulations to Marilyn Stamper and her staff for everything that they did in coordinating all the different submissions that we made as a community for funding sources to reimburse us for expenses that we incurred in relation to COVID-19 pandemic responses. There was an allocation amount that was made available to us, if you will, on a county-wide basis. In other words, we had a certain dollar amount that was allocated for us that we could solicit for reimbursement from, and we submitted a variety of our expenses in a variety of different categories, and we just received what I would call informal notification that those applications were all approved and the city took full advantage of the dollars that were available to us through these funding sources through the county and elsewhere. So very good job to Marilyn and all of her staff. Marilyn did a ton of work on that front, and we were very appreciative of that, and we're lucky to have her in that regard in obtaining this funding that we were able to offset some of the expenses that we're experiencing because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The other thing I want to make mention of is from earlier, something that I didn't directly address when we went over the audit findings, but we literally had 0 issues raised for the first time in my experience here at the city, and for the first time in my experience going back in other cities as well. And that's something that is to be lauded in any kind of a circumstance. So congratulations to Marilyn and her staff and all of the department heads and everybody else that were involved with all of our financial processes and seeing that become a reality in general. But in particular, I want to say how amazed I am that that was accomplished in the circumstances that were in place here during the early stages of the pandemic when there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fur was flying. So I'm very, very proud of all of our employees, especially the finance department and especially Marilyn Stamper for the results that we had there with no comments from the auditor. That's something that we should be proud of, and I certainly am, and I wanted to make sure that we mentioned it. The other thing, another thing to be proud of I wanted to mention was our public safety director, Ron Moore, was recently elected president of the Oakland County Association of Chiefs of Police. So congratulations to public safety director and police chief Ron Moore. Heavy is the burden, brother. So I hope you can hang in there. But congratulations on being elected to president of that organization. And we have work anniversaries that are in there ranging from 1 year up to 19 years with Lieutenant Mark Bradley and the police department leading the pack with his 19 years in this particular set of congratulations remarks that we have in the city manager update. Other than that, if there's anything I can do to help with any other information, I'd be happy to try. Otherwise, I appreciate the time for the city manager update. Thank you.
Very good. Council comments. Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My condolences again to Tim and his family on the passing of his mom. Congratulations, Public Safety Director Moore, on his election as president of the Oakland County Associations of Chiefs of Police. It's well deserved. Marilyn, great to hear on the COVID reimbursement submissions. It seems like we're always hearing good news, coming from you. Mr. Mayor, you've had an interesting first year as mayor, but you, Mr. Brown, Ms. Stamper, as well as all of the city's staff have handled all of the challenges very well. And I hope you're all ready for whatever 2021 has in store. I hope everyone had a happy Hanukkah last week, and Merry Christmas next week, and Happy New Year. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Repeating most of what Mr. Smiley said, but bears repeating their condolences to Tim Sickman, the loss of his mother, Harriet. And congratulations to Public Safety Director Moore once again. The police and fire departments are representing the city fantastically outside City Hall. I appreciate that. And also want to wish everybody I hadn't thought about Hanukkah, but thank you. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy Kwanzaa, and Happy New Year. And see everybody again in January. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Berman.
I'll echo the comments of everyone else to Tim and Police Chief Ron. It's just nice to see that both him and Jeff are really taking steps to outside the city to represent their profession and our community well. Everyone have a wonderful holiday, and I guess we'll see each other next year.
Thank you. Councilmember Grenlin Fox.
Not to repeat everything, but I also wanted to echo my condolences to Tim Sickman and his family, and also thank Marilyn and Steve and the staff for the clean audit, as well as congratulate Director Moore on his position now with the Oakland County Chiefs of Police. I also wanted to congratulate and thank everyone that worked on the virtual tree lighting. That was great. Everybody did a great job, from the mayor to Santa and everyone that was involved. I know that a lot of people, probably most people, wanted to have that in person, but in order to keep everyone safe, that's what we had to do. But I really think it turned out very nice and professionally done. So thank you. And then I also too wanted to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday to all my fellow council members and to the employees of the city and to all the residents. And let's hope that 2021 is a whole lot better. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. I wanted to share my condolences again with Tim and his family's loss recently. I also want to congratulate Public Safety Director Moore. Now I'll be able to say I know him to more people, and it'll work out better instead of just inside city limits. So we're good. I also want to thank Anna and the city manager's office and everyone else that's been working on the senior lunch event coming up later this week. That was a fantastic idea, and hopefully it brings a little bit of holiday joy to those folks who do stop by. And thank you to Meyer for sponsoring the event as well. That's phenomenal character from their management in our city. And then just in preparation for our next meeting, since we have a few weeks off, I was hoping at our next meeting we could have an update about the process for finding an assistant city manager, as well as how things are going with the fire department staffing discussions. That way we can have an update, and don't know that it needs to be a discussion. If we have a report written that's detailed enough for something, but those two things have been at the top of my mind for a while now. So I would appreciate an update at the next meeting. Thank you.
I'll give you a quick update on the assistant city manager position. Wage and salary committee met last Thursday. We wrote the job description, we set the parameters for the job, and we've given the approval to City Manager Brown to start advertising for that position. And hopefully sometime in January, we can start the interview process and move on. And shortly thereafter, we'll have an assistant city manager in place.
And Your Honor, if I can, just to give a quick update on the fire department aspect of things, we did have some productive meetings last week with the fire department about some opportunities that are in the marketplace, if you will. And because of those opportunities, we presented a letter of understanding to the membership there in the Michigan Association of Firefighters local union there. I'm hopeful that they're going to be taking that to their membership, and hopeful that we'll get a good result from that, and hopeful that we'll be able to make some moves here to address the things that have been a mutual concern for both the fire department as well as the city in terms of staffing gaps. So I'll give you more detail on what the outcome of it is, but we're looking forward to hopefully a positive result on that soon. We'll see.
Very good. All set?
Thanks, all.
All right. Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also offer my condolences to Tim Sickma and his family on the loss of his mother. Virtual tree lighting, great job with the production crew that did that. Pat, you're probably not quite ready for Good Morning America as a co-anchor, but close. Very well done, very creative. My grandchildren enjoyed the drive-through breakfast with Santa. Much different this year, of course, and no pancakes and ham, but I did cook it at home for them, so they got it as a substitute. Congratulations to Marilyn and the finance team. Again, a stellar audit. Thank you so much, and for the effort in a virtual world, trying to get through one of those. I've been through some in the private sector myself during COVID. I know it's very, very difficult, so it's congratulations again. Congratulations, Ron, on being named president of the Police Officers Association. Remember to get out there and support local. Again, this would be some of their best 2 weeks at our local restaurants with Christmas parties and department, parties and things like that. And they're just not happening. So if you can get out there and get a gift certificate, maybe you can exercise it sometime when times are better in 2021. They definitely appreciate it. Again, everybody have a happy and safe holiday season, and looking forward to a 2021. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and I just want to offer my condolences to Tim and his family on the loss of his mother. I want to congratulate the fire department on the breakfast with Santa. It was great that they were able to continue that event. Chief Roberts, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the 41st? Was that the 41st consecutive breakfast with Santa? Do you have like any idea how many cars, how many kids that participated? And
yes, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
And that might give us a little brief update on that event.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
41,
Yes.
I'm sorry, 74 families attended the 41st anniversary of our breakfast with Santa. About 200 children in those 41 cars, or 74 cars, I'm sorry. Each family received the gift certificate for a Wixom restaurant so they could get that pancake breakfast, right? Each child received a age and gender specific gift. We also collected 600 pounds of non-perishable food that was delivered to the hospitality house. And I just want to say the Firefighters Association, the foundation, again, amazing work. This is all volunteer. They don't get paid any of this. No taxpayer money is utilized. We did use the fire station this year, as Deputy Mayor Resnick pointed out. We turned the back of the building inside to a winter wonderland, and we had the walls and the fireplace set up, and Santa delivered every gift socially distanced.
Awesome, thank you, and tell the firefighters thank you. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you to the 9 employees who are celebrating work anniversaries. Again, I think we've got the greatest work staff around, and I appreciate everything that they do. Thank you, Marilyn, for all your hard work, not only on the audit, but for getting us the COVID funds that were out there. Thank you to Jeffrey Isaac, Fred Alexander for accepting your reappointments to the Board of Review. Congratulations, Ron, on being elected president of the Oakland County Association's Chief of Police. And I want to thank John Hensler, Deanna McGee, Kathy Venegas, and Melissa Harrison for the great job they did on the virtual tree lighting ceremony. Big fella did a great job. It was nice of him to come down and take some time out of his busy schedule to help us out. And yeah, I don't look. I'm not looking to get my Screen Actors Guild card too much soon, but that was a lot of fun, and I think it put some smile on some people's faces, and that's what we needed right now. And I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday, happy New Year, and great things are around the corner in 2021, and can't wait for 2021 to get here, and we'll be able to attend some of the great events that our city holds, and concerts in the summertime and things like that. And so looking forward to that. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Thanks. Everyone in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Happy holidays, and thanks for tonight.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy holidays, everyone.
You too, Brian. See you next year.
Yeah, take care.